So, hi everyone. I'm Colleen Benelli and here with my daughter Robin. And we are really excited on our Reiki Lifestyle podcast today to have our guest, Stacey Gibbons. I got to meet her several times at the OMEC Institute and for the Wisdom of Reiki conference there, and had a little bit more time this year to talk with one another. And so excited. She did a great presentation there on shamanic Reiki. And of course, as the listeners know, that is where my beginning work started, and have always worked with shamanism with Reiki. And so I'm just very excited to have this conversation with her. I do want to share a little bit about her, that she is a prominent teacher of healing and shamanism. She's the co-founder with Llyn Roberts of Shamanic Reiki Worldwide. And she studied extensively with shamanic teachers of diverse backgrounds and has practiced and taught shamanic Reiki training intensives and year-long shamanic Reiki Master Teacher apprenticeship programs with Llyn Roberts since studying with her beginning in the 1990s. So you can find Stacey on shamanicreikiworldwide.com, spelled exactly the way you think it would, shamanicreikiworldwide.com. Her Facebook is Stacey Gibbons. Stacey is Stacey.Gibbons, Gibbons. Oh, .9? Nope, just go to Stacey Gibbons. You'll find her. It's the same with Instagram. Okay, well, we're actually going to invite Stacey to share her story. So I think we will hear about your story through you and from you more than reading your bio.
Yeah.
So how about if you just start at the beginning and welcome and all of those things.
Thank you to both of you and to all of those that are listening. My story, well, let's start with this. My mom said to me a long time ago, Stacey, do you always have to do things the hard way? And the answer is yes, I think I do. So my path to Reiki and shamanism was not graceful at all. And I think that people find their way to Reiki or other healing modalities either because they're intrigued. There's something about it that they just feel in their heart to be true, and they want to know more. Others are inspired because maybe they have a friend or family member who has experienced Reiki, and others are desperate. And mine is a story of desperation. So I was in my late 20s at the time, and I had horrible panic attacks and acid reflux that was so bad that I couldn't sleep lying down. I had to prop myself up. So I was just a ball of nerves. And I can remember thinking to myself, what if life will always be like this for me? Is this my path? So I ended up going to the doctors, and the medication that they gave me almost made things worse. My stomach couldn't take it, so I was like, okay, you know what? I need to go find my way with this because I feel like I'm going crazy. So I went to the local health food store. Now, this was before the internet. I went to the local health food store, and I can remember walking down the stairs, and there was a hallway. And on one side, there was a poster for an upcoming Reiki training. On the other side, there was another poster for an upcoming Reiki training. Now, one of them was in traditional Reiki. And I knew the woman who taught traditional Reiki in the area. I didn't know her well, but I knew of her. And I can remember seeing her. She had a van, with Reiki license plates. She always wore black, like a long, long black dress. She was probably 5 feet tall, and her hair was down to her ankles. And she was very, mystical and magical. And I can remember, I want to study with her. So I called her. I took her information down. I called and called and called, and she never returned my calls. So I went with my second choice, Llyn Roberts, who was the other poster. So I took her information down and called her, and she picked up on the first ring. And at that time, that training was the weekend. I think there was a few days. So I had really no preparation. I didn't really know that much about Reiki at all, other than it was healing, and I was desperate. So I was going to do anything. So I signed up for the training, not knowing much about it, and ended up with 8 other women in this beautiful weekend certification workshop. And that was around the time Llyn was teaching more traditionally then, but she was also adding some different components to the training. So I had an amazing weekend, but I didn't feel anything. Everybody else was, after the attunement, we went around the circle, and everybody was, sharing, these beautiful experiences about the attunement. I felt this wave of emotion. I feel like my grandmother was here, every single one until they got to me. And Llyn is like, Stacey, would you like to share? And I'm like, I didn't feel anything. I didn't see anything. And in my mind, I convinced myself that Llyn must have forgotten a really important symbol, because I was probably the only one who wasn't attuned. Everybody else was attuned, but I wasn't. So I was just stuck in my head about it. And I went home and thought, this isn't going to work. What am I thinking? And I went to bed, and I woke up the next morning, still very much in my head about it all, but realized that at some point during the night, I wasn't upright anymore. And I woke up the next morning, and my acid reflux was gone, something I had experienced 24 hours a day for many months. It was completely gone. And I have not had it since.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. And it was at that point where I knew something really big was happening, and I couldn't put words to it. I couldn't even share it with anybody for a while. And the panic didn't go away so easily. I had to really unravel that over, weeks and months of working on myself, hands-on, and just practicing. But even then, my hands, I didn't feel anything in my hands. So I went through the 21-day cleansing process that, you typically go through after a level 1 experience, and kept practicing, couldn't feel anything in my hands. And on the 21st day, I passed a kidney stone.
Wow.
And once I passed that kidney stone, my hands lit up. And it just, everything started to make sense to me. And I found myself on this quest for, I just want to know more. What is this? And I have practiced and taught ever since. I've never stopped. And I love every form of Reiki. There are different forms out there. There are just so many beautiful systems at this point that are coming into being with, new information and new just waves of intelligence, just, as we collectively shift as humans. So I mean, there's a lot to my story, but that was the beginning. And again, it wasn't graceful. I questioned it, every step of the way. And I still find myself, saying, yeah, but why? But why? And, it's just compelled me to move deeper into the practices.
Talk about a Reiki detox.
Yeah, no, I know. I know.
Yeah.
Wow.
Well, it reminds me too, some of the similarities in my own path with it, because I also had a belief that everything I did had to be hard work.
Mhm.
And that was one of the major things that Reiki healed in me, was realizing that Reiki it's simple, it's effective, it's easy.
It's so simple.
I know. And that, I think it's actually one of the things it's trying to teach us the most, is we
Mhm.
do not have to make it all so complicated. We're
Mhm.
already connected.
Absolutely. And I think that takes a while. I mean, I think that
Yes.
in the beginning, and I do want to say this, is I think that anybody on this path consciously is going to meet those ego places within themselves. It's just part of the unraveling. We have put so much emphasis on the mind that this path, this Reiki path, is about the heart remembering that it was always meant to lead the way. And the mind can take a deep breath and sit in the back seat and allow the heart, to lead. And I think that there's a struggle that we all go through in the beginning of how to actually step into this energy and to let go of having to do everything right or everything perfect. I can remember um, erasing symbols in the air because I thought I
Didn't
drew
get
them
them right. Right.
until you finally let that go and you realize, oh, wait a minute, I really am a conduit for these healing forces. I don't have to overthink this. I can allow my heart to remember that this is a natural way of being. Nothing needs to be forced.
Well, and it's, part of your story too. First of all, I love that you share as a part of your story that you didn't feel anything, because that's such a common question coming out of Reiki 1 or Reiki 2. Like, I don't feel anything. You have all of these experiences that everybody's sharing, and then like you're the one or two, or think you're the only one or two, like nothing's happening.
Yeah, I must have done it wrong.
I did something's wrong, or something's wrong with me, or, all of those places. But because this process, this journey that we're on with it, is this path to wellness, and every single one of us has a different path to that,
Mhm.
whether that's physical, whether that's mental, whether that's emotional. Like you said, that ego aspect of it, of all of that unraveling that occurs, that I think we still all do, right? As we go into that remembering and that further, deeper place of remembering. But that, I think, it's a part of the beautiful part, but then also a place that we can struggle with it, is like, where is that path for us? And what are those things that we're detoxing? Yours, literally detoxing. Those
Yeah.
places that we're detoxing, those places that we're letting go to get to that underlying empowerment. It's like you said,
Mhm.
your hands turned on. That's that empowerment.
Yeah. And it's not, it's also just a deep journey of remembering,
Yeah.
that we all meet nature where we're at, and that we are unique. And some people are highly visual, some people are highly empathic, and some people are intuitive. It's like you have to find your language. And I think it's so natural for us to step onto this path and compare ourselves, to our teachers. I want to be like that. And, that's it's part of the journey to remember that we are all absolutely perfect the way that we are. And yes, you may emulate your teachers and respect your teachers, but at the same time, it's about finding out what you're made of. Like, we remember when we're children, we're not thinking, about nature and or the natural state of being. We're truly engaged. Our bodies are engaged. We're outside where, the trees are magic. Um, you know, we feel everything, and the disconnect is not there. So when we find our way back onto this path, it's this beautiful unfolding of, wait a minute, I remember this. And it's not just about nature outside. Nature isn't just the thing that we go out into. It's part of it. It's about, softening into what we're truly made of, and how everything that we are is mirrored in nature, and and the opposite. So it is a process of releasing what no longer serves us, belief systems and insecurities, and going through those ego places to finally let the heart lead the let the heart lead the way, you know. And if someone tells you that in the very beginning, it's like, we don't believe it. We don't believe that it's that simple.
Well,
So,
it took me years of learning, and as we'll be talking also about shamanism, a lot of my training was in Lakota traditions, and learning how to sit in circle with that style of communication, where it is a much more indirect and circular style of learning,
yeah.
where we are so linear. And when you were saying earlier about, did I get it right? Did I do it right? That took so much healing and undoing of that self expectation. And
Mhm.
then the patience that I
Mhm.
had to learn by sitting in those circles and waiting for the whole circle, the conversation, and not just necessarily everybody in the circle, but the person speaking finally coming around to what they were speaking about.
Mhm.
Took a long time to let go of that linear,
Yeah.
head brain,
Yeah.
type of a style of learning.
Yeah. And there are little deaths along the way
Yeah.
when you release those, because our beliefs and the way that we learn become a part of the blueprint of who we are. And when you let those go, those little deaths happen, and all of these emotions come when you start to realize that life is not what we think it is. We've created a construct in linear time and space that isn't really true. And you have to be able to let that go, and, to bring in the new. And yeah, what a journey it is. And I think that when you step, however you step onto it, whether it's
Yeah.
graceful or not, you're going to go through it. And I think what you said about patience, that's like, it's key.
Yeah. It's one of the things, like as Colleen was saying in the beginning, you just want to know it all. And why don't I know it all? And then after you get going, you're like, oh, I don't know it all. That's so, I still get to explore forever. And
Exactly.
yeah, with those, I was going to say little deaths or big deaths, you definitely have those
Okay.
Yeah,
tower moments, those
absolutely.
you in the cocoon, dark night of the souls, where then it's like, okay, this one part of me is ready to transform, or all of me is ready to transform into a new version of myself. And that can take patience as well.
Hmm.
Is just all of that cycle and those seasons of life and who we are as people. And also that process of remembering that
Yeah.
you are getting to more and more of not just your own authentic self in these human bodies, but also that remembering of your spirit, you know,
Yeah.
you are God consciousness within you. And this path is such a supportive path to do that. There's a
It
lot
really,
of different paths, but this is a really supportive path to be able to do this.
yeah. I mean, it was created to be that way, and I think it just it's a beautiful journey that really aligns with your own perfect timing. Even if you feel like you're, you're going into it kicking and screaming and you're resisting, like all of that is okay.
Mhm.
Like it doesn't have to look a certain way. Um, you are absolutely going to resist pieces of this path. And that's where you find out who you truly are. And, I've been doing this for 30 years and I've never gotten bored with teaching or seeing clients. Um, there's always something new to learn or to remember. Um, so yeah, I love it.
It's funny you brought up resistance because that's what I was going to talk about too, because I think a lot of times, particularly when people are watching people like us that are teachers and we've been doing it for a long time and really realizing the pathway and some of the struggles that come with that, because we can laugh about the unlearning of the linear and being more comfortable in the circular way of learning. But boy, I definitely had some really powerful levels of resistance.
Hmm.
Because especially in shamanism, a lot of those traditions are they're hard. And some of the Lakota training that I did for years, there's some very dedicated paths of learning. And I definitely had a lot of resistance. And one of the things I discovered with it, as you talked about, that willingness to continue on the path, was I remember thinking, well, it is circular, and I've come back to this point, and here's the resistance to give me the opportunity to decide, do I want to keep going? Because once you learn it, once you remember, you really don't go back into the forgetting. And there's a whole other side of life lived
Yeah.
in the remembering.
Hmm. That's so true. I say that to students all the time. It's like, when you step into, a workshop experience and, you're learning, it's like you've got all of this support and it's quite magical. And then you go home.
Right.
We laugh because we know.
Yeah, you go home and you may be on a high for several days. And then you remember that you can't unlearn it. It's like your consciousness has now expanded
Mhm.
and you feel something um that really invites you to step deeper into that mystery. And that's where it can become, that's where you're going to see the resistance. And there are beautiful practices in all forms of Reiki. And I think when we remember that Reiki is also a discipline, and the key to freedom really is discipline, because that's what the mind truly wants. Because without it, the mind is all over the place. It's like, an unruly toddler, and you just stay consistent and stay disciplined with the practices, and the practices teach you really what you already know. So I think that can be challenging, especially today, because let's face it, our attention span today, with technology and everything that's going on in the world, um, we can be all over the place. But if you're stepping in to any form of Reiki, it can be quite simple. It's just stay disciplined. with these beautiful practices, and you will become your own greatest teacher.
Absolutely. And one of the ways that I did that to manage the resistance, because I mean, there were some hard times of like, I am not doing this anymore. Even all the way to, this is the dumbest thing I've ever done. It's like, what a bunch of hooey,
Right.
all those things. But the discipline that I used was I kept showing up. And
Yes.
that was the piece. I thought, I don't have to do more than that. I'll just show up, even if I'm sitting with my arms crossed, like, prove it.
I know.
Telling spirit, prove it.
Exactly. Exactly. And discipline doesn't mean that it doesn't have to be hard. But
Right.
some personalities, like mine, we will make it harder than it needs to be. And it sounds to me like you probably had days just like me where I was like, you know what? If I hear the word Reiki one more time, I'm going to lose it. I don't want to hear about it. I just want to go and I want to read something that has nothing to do with healing. I want to just pretend it doesn't exist for a little while, because you will have those moments where you can't unlearn it, but there are parts of you that want to go back to a time where you think things were simpler because you didn't have an understanding of all of this. But you just get through that too. And like Colleen said, it's like you just show up. That can be your discipline. Just show up. That's it.
I use a similar phrase. My only responsibility is to get myself there. Everything else falls into place. Comes to that discipline, because once you're there, you're there. Even if you're sitting with your arms crossed, you're still doing it. You're still, everything unfolds from there. But I think too, a part of it, as you were just kind of saying, Stacey, is that you can't unlearn it, and then yet there's this entrainment process. It's within your own body that, like you said, that kind of that pattern that might now be behind you, but that body needs to learn a new pattern. The mind needs to learn a new pattern, and it's just that can take time. You have to, and so there's this entrainment process around it. And also there can be an entrainment process around you. You can go into spaces that might be on a different frequency as you, maybe even in your home with family, things like that. There can be a different level of resonance there that eventually also entrains, that just by being you and in that running that Reiki energy, being in these practices, that it naturally happens as well. But those kind of like mismatches of frequencies can be really jolting at first. And
Right.
you said after you get out of a class, especially, I think of it sometimes as that term like travel depression, when you come home from travel and you've been on this like kind of travel high, and then everything, a lot of people talk about that and experiences that. And that doesn't happen all the time. It doesn't happen for everybody. So there's a lot of different experiences of that. Sometimes when you go into that, entrainment, you just stay there for until the next time. So it is definitely very, each experience is very independent of each other and unique of each other. But I do also think that that can happen for people. That resonance in your own body and the environment around you takes some time to
Absolutely.
speed.
Absolutely. And there's, I can remember when I first stepped onto this path, and, once I was all in, I was all in. It didn't mean that I didn't ask questions and, go through those moments of, yeah, but prove it. My world shifted around me. And relationships changed. And the way I viewed my future changed. And, you know, you step into a different way of being. It doesn't necessarily happen overnight, but it does take some time for those energies to start to kind of create those deeper weavings. And it can feel awkward. And there are times when I think you can feel alone on this path too, you know? And again, it's like our stories are our stories, and everybody has a different experience. But I, I like I like to tell the raw stories, of what I went through, um, because it's not all rainbows and butterflies, this path.
Yeah, well, it's helpful. If you're one of the ones on the hard side of it, it's like, "Oh, thank God."
Yeah.
I mean, they went through that too, and it's such a deep lesson, all of it in trust.
Hmm.
And you one of the things is that I also believe happens over time is even then because hard cycles in life
Hmm.
happen whether you have Reiki or not. And thank God, or these tools and techniques, shamanism, whatever the modalities we may have. And thank God we have them through them because they definitely give you a very different perspective of traveling that road when you're going through challenging times. So it's so helpful. But the other thing that shifts is when you are going through them, it's like you have a level of trust that, you might still even question it, like, why is this happening? But then you also have this level of trust of like, okay, this is happening for a reason. And
Hmm.
I can do this. I'm strong enough to endure this.
Hmm.
And it's not to say there's days that you don't remember that. It's not to say that there's days where you're not sitting in your hard feelings, but there is a different level of trust that you can
Hmm.
have through those cycles.
Hmm. Yeah, and you can't always put words to it.
Yeah.
It's just that there's something very magical and ordinary, that happens, once you start learning or remembering who you are, even if you question. Because let's face it, it's like questioning brings you deeper onto your path. So just because you question doesn't mean you don't believe what you're doing. It's just, it brings you deeper. Um, but it feels so magical because your spirit is really leading you, to step into a very, very different way of being, on this planet. So yeah, go through your hard times and know that you're still engaged, with normal everyday linear time and space, but you also have one foot in sacred time and space as well. And that carries you, and invites your heart to open even more.
Well, so how did you get involved with shamanic Reiki? Go ahead and share with us that part of your story too.
I feel like that was just such a natural progression, for me. And part of it was because Llyn, really started to open things up, for the community here in that way. She started working with John Perkins and, traveling to South America. And, uh, things just unfolded for her. And it was really then, with simple practices, that I started my own, exploration of that. And Lynn moved away. I can't even remember what year it was. She moved to Western Mass. And again, this was really before the internet. So, I
Right.
mean, it wasn't as easy to stay in touch. And, her family was young, my family was young. We were busy. We lost track of each other for quite a few years. And I had a very, very powerful dream about her. I want to say in 2006 or 2007. I might be wrong about that, but around then. And it was so powerful that I had to try to figure out where she was. And at the time, she was working for Dream Change Coalition, um, leading sacred retreats to South America. And I found her email, got in touch with her, and said, listen, I know we haven't been in touch for a while, but I had a dream about you. And I described the dream, and she got back to me right away and said, that's exactly what's going on in my life right now. Would you like to come and assist me at Omega for a master practitioner workshop? And it was then that we reconnected. And I just really dove into the practices. But I also started stepping into kind of my own path with that too, with Peruvian shamanism, and everything just kind of came together over, well, from, I'm going to say, around 2008 or 9 until present day. So I studied with Ray Christ from the Jaguar Path in Peruvian shamanism. And, I loved it because it incorporated all aspects of yoga too, really a fully embodied way of approaching shamanism. I studied and taught with him for years, and then made the decision probably around 2013, where Llyn and I created the programs that exist now in Shamanic Reiki. Well, first it was the year-long online training, which we doubted. We were like, can this even happen online? I mean, because we were both so used to teaching in person, and those in-person teachings are so powerful. So we doubted whether that could translate online. And then Shamanic Reiki Master Teacher evolved into a second-year program called Evolving Shamanic Reiki Master Teacher Level 1, and then a third-year program, Evolving Shamanic Reiki Master Teacher Level 2. And it really became a mystery school for Reiki and shamanism. But what it also became was a life empowerment program, so that people could feel supported on every level of their being as they went through, like, everything that we've discussed so far, the highs and the lows and all of these things, and just moving deeper and deeper into the mystery. But one of the reasons why I stepped onto the shamanic path is because I love the engagement of the client with the work. So it takes it from, Reiki with hands-on, which is so very powerful. It takes it to a different level because you are now guiding clients through a journey. Your client is finding areas of imbalance and describing, what those imbalances feel like, look like, sound like, and actually shape-shifting those areas of the body, the heart, the mind, and the spirit. So I love the engagement with the client because it felt very, very empowering, not only going through it myself, going through those practices, but really creating a sacred container for others to do that work consciously. And I have so many stories about that as well. I mean, I've seen, even after 30 years, I still doubt it sometimes. I just have those moments where I'm like, but is it real? And then,
Am I making this up?
yeah, exactly. Exactly. But I have so many experiences that have proven to me without a doubt that there is a sentient force, and an intelligent force that, expands far beyond what we can understand in a linear way, that supports us, on this path every step of the way. So that's really how I stepped into the more shamanic practices. I love them.
You want to share some of your Peruvian experiences? You're
Well,
interested to hear about that.
yeah, a lot of the experiences I had were with Ray, Christ, moving through deeply into those practices, as well as with Llyn. But I've got to say, the experiences that I have in my past that were the most transformational, um, that was with the Mayan elders in Guatemala.
Wow.
So that to me is what shifted everything into a very heart-based path. Mayan cosmology is not shamanic Reiki. Like, you don't have to know Mayan cosmology and teach it as a shamanic Reiki master teacher, but we do offer it as a foundation for understanding the subtle energies that exist. And when you start to step into feeling into the world within you and around you, um, the world becomes so, I don't even know if I can describe it in words, because it's a feeling. And participating in fire ceremonies where we call in and engage with these energies, which again, they're not something that's external. They're within us and all around us. And it's really it brings you to a place of embodiment that is profound. And I can remember, here's just an example of something that I experienced early on, working with the Mayan elders, is greeting the day, getting up at dawn and greeting the day, and connecting in with nature. And at the time, we were working with Tata Pedro Cruz, who was known as Heart of the Lake on Lake Atitlan. Just a really beautiful embodiment of a Mayan elder. And I can remember on Lake Atitlan waking up at dawn, and I think it was like the first day, and I was so afraid that I was going to sleep in that I'm not sure I actually slept. So I got up before everybody else, and I went out onto the veranda, and there he was, Tata Pedro Cruz, sitting with a flute at the end of the dock. And it's still dark out, but the light was coming in, and it was that beautiful in between place. And he was sitting on the dock, and he was playing his flute. And Lake Atitlan was like glass, very, very still. And as he was playing the flute, I could see these little ripples coming closer and closer to him. So I'm trying to be quiet. I don't want to disturb anyone. And I'm watching. And right at the end of the dock, there were like maybe 7 or 8 fish. And their heads were popping out of the water as if he was playing to the spirits of Lake Atitlan. And I can remember thinking to myself, am I actually seeing this? This cannot be real, that he is communicating with, these beings of the lake. But that's exactly what he was doing, because he was so engaged and connected, to the lake and to the elements and to nature within and around him. And it just, like, every day every day we had an experience that pulled me even deeper into the mystery of these subtle energies that exist. And I think it was then that I started to understand shamanism in a very different way. It wasn't about witnessing experiences. It wasn't about kind of going through motions. It was like, wow, we really are actually connected. It was the first time I felt that in a way that wasn't just me understanding it intellectually. Because like, oh, we're all connected through these deeper weavings. But it was at that point where I actually felt it. And so, whether you're working with the Lakota or working with the South American shamans or the Mayan elders or the Siberian shamans, you'll find your path. But the path really opens you up to experiencing what it actually means to be interconnected through the web of life.
And over time, it just goes deeper and deeper in that understanding.
Yeah. And it's like the universe, like our minds can't comprehend how large the universe is. And it's hard to comprehend that we can continue to go deeper and deeper and deeper. It's just this unfolding. And, I think that, I'm close to 60 now. And, time has the concept of time for me is changing. It's like, okay, well, I only have a certain amount of time, linear time left on this planet. And I can remember feeling like in my 30s and 40s that I need to study all of these things. And I was always looking at the next certification. It's like, what else can I do? And because I want to know more, I want to know more. And now I realize that it's not so much about that next certification being the thing that finally helps you to understand. And now you're finally good enough because you've taken this one more certification. It's like you realize that everything that you've been searching for is within you. And you can tap into that at any time. And it just takes, showing up, like you said, Colleen, right in the very beginning. All you have to do is show up. So it's a wondrous path. And again, everybody has their own trajectory, and you can't do it wrong. You absolutely cannot do it wrong. All you do is show up and you just follow your heart. And if that leads you to shamanism, shamanic Reiki, holy fire, Karuna, Shambhala, I mean, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It's going to take you where you need to go. And you don't have to feel like you don't have enough time because you have all the time in the world.
When I first started, because I started in shamanic training for 3 years prior to Reiki, and and very extensive training. So it wasn't like just a weekend. It was very, very involved. And one of the traditions that I got to study was Celtic shamanism as well, and fairy doctoring with Tom Cowan, who's back east in your area, and got to go to Ireland with him and do the studies there. And I remember at that time thinking, well, this is the path. This is the way I wanted to do it. And this is where I connect. And then the path didn't really lead me to more of that particular tradition, more of that style, like you say, pre-internet, pre the timing of ease in those connections. And I remember doing the studies with Lakota, and I never really ended up in Peruvian study, which is kind of interesting. African and South African, Nepali, Tibetan, different studies in that way. And then really coming to understand that they're all pathways to me. That at the beginning, I always say, at the beginning, I thought I was looking for God, which that too.
Yes.
And all those traditional pathways that I tried first, because that's,
Mhm.
of course, what was available. And now what I know is that really I was looking for myself. How do
Mhm.
I hear me? What's
Beautiful.
my inner truth? What's the depth of that? And so, like you say, these different pathways, whichever one you step onto. And I feel like I always see it in an imagery of solar lights on a path. And, you follow, sometimes you can only see one light.
Yeah.
And sometimes you're not even supposed to or ready to walk to that one light yet.
Yeah.
And then other times you can see the whole pathway lit up with solar lights, and you can find it. And it can be slow
Mhm.
and it can be fast. And
Mhm.
somebody said something, live in the pause. I can't remember exactly the saying. It was such a good saying last
There's
week.
peace in the pause.
Say that again.
I think it was there's peace in the pause.
Peace in the pause.
Is that it?
Something like that. I remember it was two P's, so maybe it was peace in the pause. And I remember that even different times, like, going back to even the concept of resistance in the study, in the unfolding of it all, and the learning and the unlearning, is those times when you started to talk about timing,
Mhm.
because timing and the cycles we're in can be so is so much a part of it. When
Yeah.
I started, my kids were teenagers, low, early tweens to teens, and all the busyness with that, and of course wanting to be able to do everything right now. I want
Yeah.
to get it right now, and having family to take care of. We had a farm and all of that to take care of. So anyway, I love your story. And part of the reason I also wanted to hear more about the Peruvian shamanism is because it became something that so many people were practicing. And I actually wanted to hear from you, like, how do people find the authentic training and teachings? Because it's definitely trending down there. And so how are you finding, like,
Yeah.
good teachers? I guess they can come to you for it, but also if they're looking for that specifically.
Yeah. I mean, I would recommend, as far as going on a sacred trip, I really say Ray Christ from the Jaguar Path. Um, but I think that, I really value teachers who teach from the heart and hold a really sacred and safe container. Um, you know, again, people follow their path and you can't do it wrong, but that doesn't mean that you're not going to have some hard lessons,
Yeah.
along the way. And I think that when if you're considering, traveling and working in a sacred way, do your research. Um, I know that the trips to the Maya lands that we hold are very, very safe and sacred, and I think that's I think that's really important because there are people out there who maybe aren't necessarily trained,
Yeah.
in a way that um, is going to feel safe. I think safety is key because when you feel safe, you can you can relax and allow your heart to really open. So yeah,
So
um,
you do you lead trips there? Is that what you were saying?
No, I
Okay.
don't. I have been so busy.
Right. In all your spare time. Do you do that too, Stacey?
I don't. I teach the 3-year-long programs, as well as several workshops a year online and in person. Things are shifting right now. I Who knows what I'm going to be doing as far as trips, but that's coming up for me. And I do think there is a trip to Peru that is percolating. Probably not. Probably not in 2025, but in 2026. But through Shamanic Reiki Worldwide, and through OMEC. OMEC is our sister organization, Olympic Mountain EarthWisdom Circle. And the reason why that was created, it was created to give back to um, the indigenous people who gifted us the practices that you find in the Shamanic Reiki book, in shapeshifting into higher consciousness, the good remembering, Llyn's other books, Speaking with Nature, with Sandra Ingerman, as well as Walking Through Darkness, her newest book with Sandra Ingerman. So it's really important that we give back. And we teach the practices exactly the way they were taught. So again, through Shamanic Reiki Worldwide, I mean, we do have, trips to the sacred Maya lands. We also have trips to the whole rainforest to connect deeply with nature. But again, it's like there are a lot of really good and amazing teachers out there who are leading trips. You just have to follow your heart and do your research.
Well, tell us more about Shamanic Reiki Worldwide that you have created, and tell us all about that.
Llyn and I created it in the cafe at the Omega Institute.
Oh, really?
We
I
really
love
did.
it.
We actually sat down after leading a Shamanic Reiki Master Practitioner workshop at Omega. We sat down when that was complete, and we mapped it all out. And again, we went into it not quite sure whether it was going to, we weren't sure if the magic was going to translate online. And it's very different now than it was when we started over 10 years ago, because every year we tweak it and make it more accessible. But one of the things that we've stayed true to is we don't make it. It's an oral tradition, so there's a lot of moving deeply into the practices, but it's not maybe as technological as some other programs that you can find out there. We make it very, very simple. And it's a home-based apprenticeship program, really holding the idea of, you become your greatest teacher, you become your own greatest healer. And, you find your pace. Some people step onto the path and they absolutely know that they're going to become teachers. Like I knew right away I knew, oh, this is what I'm going to do. And I was a practitioner for many, many years until I couldn't do both. So I mainly teach. Some people step onto the path and they are just meant to master their practitioner skills. They're adept at holding, that sacred container one-on-one for clients. And, some people step into the programs really knowing that they're going to merge the practices with other things. Maybe they're artists, or maybe they have other healing modalities that they're merging with Shamanic Reiki. sometimes people just step in because they want community. And that's all you need. You just follow your heart. If you want community and you want to work on your own self-healing path, then that's what it becomes. So we've just created it in a way that it's not prescribed. You don't step in and like, this is exactly what I need to do. It's a 3-year journey of self-discovery. And, many people step in and they're like, no, you know what? I'm just doing this for my own self-healing. And by the end of the year, they're pretty convinced that they want to teach.
Right.
So, and that's the beauty of it is you can allow all of those different changes to happen. You don't have to decide right away.
Stacey, I have to ask, what technology were you using back in 2012 in that time frame to be online with people? Was it like WebEx? Like, what were you using?
Oh, no. And to be honest, we still use this free conference call.
Oh, no way.
Oh, that's
Yeah.
what I started with too.
Yeah. I mean, we have Zoom. So just as an idea, like for the 3-year-long programs, we have what's called clan gatherings. So once a month, sometimes twice a month, you'll be with me, in a clan gathering where it's on Zoom. We all see each other. I lead practices. We open up the circle for sharing all sorts of things. But some of the teachings are recorded so that you can just listen to the guided journeys. You can listen to the wisdom from different teachers. And sometimes we have live free conference call gatherings. And the beauty of that is that it's not so visual. Once you get onto like Zoom and of course you can take your video off at any time. But I think that because our culture is so visually motivated in some ways, and being on Zoom with people, you may not be in a space all the time to really allow yourself to move into those deeper practices. And when you hop onto a call, you're not thinking about, what do I look like right now? Or are people judging me? And that happens. I mean, anytime you come into a forum like that, you can have those thoughts. So free conference call is still a way where we gather and we put the visual part on the shelf so that we can just deepen into the oral traditions. So we still do that. But that was all it was in the very beginning, with lots of emails back and forth and all of that. And now it's a little more fine-tuned. You have access to a library, a vast library. Llyn she's written amazing books and, co-authored amazing books, but there's so much content in the library that you can't find, in any of the books. So students have access to that, but really it's self-paced. It's steeping or stepping into the mystery of shamanism, of Reiki, and really just your own heart. I love it.
Yeah. So go ahead and go into shamanic Reiki and maybe some of how it differs from what we think of. There's really not specifically traditional Reiki, but just for the sake of words.
Yeah.
And then also, maybe share some of the ways that it works. What are some of the techniques you're using and teaching?
One of the things that we do, I mean, we don't even call them techniques, we call them practices. And the reason why we do that is because technique can sometimes bring the energy, a masculine energy in that's very sort of like, step A, do this, step B, do this.
Yeah.
So Llyn just took that word right out, really to hold a container of just practicing and remembering. So this is just from my own experience, because again, there are many different forms of Reiki out there, and even the more traditional Reiki that I originally learned with Llyn is not as traditional as some of the paths.
Yeah.
But what intrigued me is that in traditional Reiki, while powerful, you can have a client come and they might fall asleep on the table, they may be lightly engaged, they might talk through the whole thing, but really you're just moving through a set of hand positions, and you're allowing yourself to really be a conduit for those healing forces. It's not so much of an engaged conversation or anything that's led with the client. So what I found, and this is just my personal experience, is that I would have clients coming over and over again, not necessarily, they just came to have the work done, but they didn't really want to engage in the process of doing what they needed to do in their real world to change things. Does traditional Reiki, just hands-on work? Absolutely. But for me, what I found is that pulling in the practices where you start to ask questions of your client, like, okay, what I'm hearing is that you're feeling angry. Where do you feel that? If you could choose an area of the body where that feeling of imbalance lives, where would it be? You can't do it wrong. If you're not sure, just guess. Let's work with that. Get on the table. Start with just light hands-on work, and then go in. Okay, bring your awareness back to that area. If you could describe it in detail, what would it look like? Would it have a texture, a sound, an emotional tone? Would it be a shape, an object, a color? What needs to change about this area? And when they're engaged, all sorts of things are happening. What if they placed a stone on that area of the body? Now, all of a sudden, the body engages with, I'm feeling, and I'm also aware of the stone in that area. And your neural pathways start firing, and you start to remember things that you wouldn't necessarily move into if you were just relaxed and with your eyes closed, with hands on. You're engaged in something that that is empowering you to unravel it. Because even in traditional Reiki, what's one of the first things that we learn is that we're not doing it.
Mhm.
Like, as the practitioner, it's not us.
Yeah.
It's the client. The client is leading that the whole way, whether it's hands-on or whether you're bringing in shamanic practices. But what I found about shamanic practices is the client becomes engaged in a different way. And the whole nervous system is engaged in where that imbalance lives. And now, how do I neutralize it? How do I release it after neutralizing it? How do I shapeshift this? Does this come from a past life? Does this come from a traumatic past event? Do I sense energetic cords or weavings that are connected to past events that are somehow still creating a map of my life that I'm following that no longer serves me? How can I release these binds, these ties, these cords? So it's just very, very powerful. And I think one of my favorite stories is we have this practice called shape-shifting with the tasmic portal. And it starts with active listening. And you just open your heart with your client, and you lead your client to discover whatever is happening in their world in this present moment, whatever feels out of balance. Maybe it's something that happened 2 weeks ago, 6 months ago, up to a year ago. There's something that's feeling unsettled. Let's track that back. When's the last time you felt that way? What's the emotion that is connected to that experience? And you go back to the oldest, most conscious memory of where that imbalance started. It may not make sense in what's going on now and in what happened when you were 5 years old. It may not make sense, and you may not be able to figure out, well, yeah, but that doesn't, this was this emotion and why is that emotion? But somehow in the energetic field and in the nervous system, there's something that was logged into the body as memory. And that has so much attached to it. Maybe muscle patterns, maybe emotions, maybe constrictions in the body. So we track that back and move through a hands-on practice and actually release that whole line of energy that has been built upon by something that happened that you may not even quite remember perfectly now. I had a woman, I was teaching yoga and at a studio that I owned for several years. And this woman came in, and I didn't know her well, but every time she practiced, she spent a little bit of extra time in Shavasana. And there were definitely emotions that were being released until this one day where she just stayed on the mat and cried and cried. And everybody left. And we connected, and I said, would you like to do a practice to find out what's going on? And what was happening in her world is she was trying to have a baby, and she had had several miscarriages in a row, several. And she was just at a point where she was getting ready to give up and, thought she was broken and all of these things. And we tracked it back to an incident that happened in, I want to say it was 6 or 7 years old. We went through the whole thing, through the whole practice, and within 2 months she was pregnant.
Mm. Love that.
And that was her. She did that work.
Yeah.
She was willing to consciously move back in time to follow the line of energy that created the original imbalance. And you can go even beyond that. With some clients, you go back to the most conscious and oldest memory, which then can be brought into a past lifetime.
Because Stacey, we do similar style sessions and work with people, and I agree with, it's kind of going back to the beginning of what you were saying about, as Colleen and I say, Reiki on its own does this work too.
Mm-hmm.
But combining it with these techniques, or I think you said practices,
Practices.
yeah, combining it with these it accelerates it. From what we found is that's like such a part, and like you said, that empowerment that comes from, here it is, I'm recognizing it, and I'm letting this go, and I'm going into more and more of that remembering that we were talking about before, that full empowerment of who I am, outside of these injuries to my soul, outside of these, injuries, whether it's this lifetime or past lifetimes. And I think you get there moving to wellness through Reiki on its own, just like you said, hands-on straight Reiki, but by moving through these, the acceleration can be so extraordinary, and the empowerment and the healing that can come from sometimes really staring these things in the face can
Mm-hmm.
be, and sometimes they're even small, right? It's not always just the big stuff. Sometimes they're little small things can be so empowering for people that it just accelerates that process quantumly, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, it's that conscious engagement. And um, sometimes clients, like we have to hear ourselves say things sometimes
Yeah.
to have that aha moment. And
Yeah.
when that aha moment happens, your body, your whole nervous system, endocrine system, everything is engaged in that unraveling. And yes, absolutely, Reiki will take you there. Um, it's very gentle. Reiki is very, very gentle. Even when you combine shamanic practice
Yeah.
with it.
Great.
And Reiki will get you there. I think that the difference is that with merging the shamanic practices with it is just a more conscious way to have those moments of, um, self-discovery. But yeah, so I want to just be clear. It's like you can get there. And thank you
Yeah.
for saying that, because it's not, you have to find the path that works for you. And if that's traditional Reiki or any other form of Reiki, open your heart to it. It's going to happen no matter what, because you are guiding it. Whether
Yeah.
you're conscious of it or not, you're guiding it.
And setting your intentions and all of that, even if you're drawn to a more
Yeah.
traditional hands-on style of Reiki, but just these, like you said, the conscious, the being able to like actually see it or feel it or hear it, taste it, all of those different things. Um, it's a really fast is not quite the right word because it continues, but at the same time, you really do go through a different experience of it.
Hmm.
And it is all, like you said, what everybody is called to. We're in the same boat as like all right ways, it's all good. But it's just between our own experiences and then experiences of clients, there is such resonance with the things that come through in sessions. And also on the other side of it, like the extraordinary empowerment, even if it's not from a healing experience, the exploration that
Yes.
you, like you mentioned, with the experience with the lake, right? And that, I mean, you could even just see you transported back there when you were, telling that story, um, and having that experience. But it is this, you also get to explore consciousness. You get to
Hmm.
explore the universe right here in your own body, in your own, and it's like that too is endlessly fascinating. The
Yeah.
experiences that you have with clients and students is endlessly expansive, is maybe even more, it's fascinating, but expansive is probably the better word that you
Hmm.
get to, um, you had said somewhere along the line of like, because I was the same as you. I resonated with that of like, I did not start out with these beliefs, and it's expanded the beliefs through the experiences and through
Hmm.
discovery and through that inner deep knowing without a shadow of a doubt. This is what is true for me, not for everybody. This is what is true for me. And
Hmm.
so that's the other part of these practices that are so empowering, it's like, because
Hmm.
that's healing on its own too. Again, that's another journey to remembering of that connection.
Yeah. And some people, it's you don't have to step into any form of Reiki, um, feeling like now that I'm attuned and I'm a level, 1 or 2 or whatever, and I'm going to be taking human clients. Some people are drawn to working with animals. Some people are drawn to working with the land. Some people are drawn to working with teenagers. And again, you find your path. We all have something, that we're meant to do in this lifetime. And if it's just opening our hearts and remembering that our hearts lead the way, that is enough. Because if we are willing to step in to do our work, whatever that looks like, again, doesn't have to be graceful. If we're willing to step in and do the work, we are doing our part in healing this planet. And I think it can be overwhelming when you do step onto this path to think that you're not doing enough.
Yeah.
But look at everything that's happening on this planet, and what can I do? Heal yourself. That's what you can do. Do the best that you can to heal yourself. There's no right way to do that. You may feel like you're tripping over yourself, but like Colleen said, just show up every day, and you have done your part. So
that is such an important piece to recognize. And I do think that in the Reiki community, a lot of us carry that of how can I help? How can I make a difference? And I use the word carry that in a kind of a specific way, because the carrying of it can be heavy, and it's not meant to be. Like you say, working on self matters. It's the first step. It's the most important of all, because each of us contributing to the higher frequencies is another empowerment of those higher frequencies and co-creation of our world. Setting an intention that this is what we're inviting into this reality, into this material world.
Yeah.
So, go ahead.
One of the things that Llyn says, and she said it very early on, and I can remember having a little bit of a reaction to this. She said, it's not about asking, how can I serve? We're not here to become servants of this. And what happens sometimes is when you come from a place of how can I serve, you disconnect. That's when it starts to go into perhaps not being fully embodied. You're so concerned with healing everybody else or doing your part in all of these different things that you're not quite connected to it, and it can become spiritually bypassed. And it's not about that. It's not about always being, in the ethers, having these spiritual experiences. You will have them, absolutely, on this path, but it's also about becoming embodied. We're in this body for a reason in this lifetime. And the more we separate it from it and, try to heal everything. And that I think that's one of the lessons. It's the lesson that I had to learn early on, because of course there was ego involved. And of course, I had this new skill set, and I wanted to help everybody at the expense of myself sometimes, not taking care of myself. And that is a way, that we naturally ignore the things that we need to heal for ourselves, because we're so busy, working at healing the world. And, you have to look at yourself and be engaged on your own healing path at the same time. And it doesn't mean, sometimes, new teachers or new practitioners don't feel like they can get out there in the world. Like, I don't know enough. And look, I have all of these things going on in my life. Because you're human, Of course you have things going on in your life, but that doesn't take away your ability to hold a sacred container for others. So go out and do that. Hold that space for the land, hold it for the animals and for people, and do your own work at the same time.
So true. That is such a good point. And I would have to say that was one of my bigger struggles
Mhm.
as an overgiver to begin with. And now what I know, that overgiving ultimately was a control issue. Is how do
Mhm.
I control my world around me? And that's through this output. And one of the things I talk about that Reiki helped me with the most was teaching me to move into the receiving
Mhm.
as what healed that for me, because I do think there's both the natural wanting to save the world.
Mhm.
Even as a child, I had that
Mhm.
internal dialogue. And it didn't come from my family because that was not my parents' ideal.
Yeah.
And so it was a natural thing for me, but it transformed into this like massive overgiving, inability to receive for myself. Yep. Somebody, I can help you. Well, do
Yeah.
you need any help? Oh no, I've got it, and never taking help. And so I do think that's one of the things that Reiki, out of all of it, really came in to help me with. And then at the beginning of 2020, when everything was so volatile, and, living here in Portland, so many protests and challenges and civil rights issues. And I was working with another woman, and we both carry grandmother medicine. And so we were working together in a journey, and decided we would go to the ancestors and ask them, what can we do? Because of course they've been through pandemic, they've been through human rights. So let's ask. And they said, go to the descendants and ask them what you can
Mhm.
do today. And in working with the descendants, and this is over time, the descendants talked about how important this personal work is individually, that we are making a difference by doing this personal work at this level. When we join in community, of course, that is effective and matters. But because what we are doing is co-creating the energy of wellness, of well-being, of being a part of the earth and caring for the earth, and moving out of some of that human shaming that
Mhm.
is so prevalent, into the human love, as you've been talking about, really being embodied. And they talked about how much we're making a difference, that it makes a difference with what we're doing individually. And then, of course, collectively is wonderful because it brings
Mhm.
us to community and other people sharing in the same interests and practices.
Yeah. And sometimes we're never going to know if we made a difference
Yeah.
with some of our clients or apprentices along the way. And it's like you have to let go of the expectation. You have to let go of maybe your need to be needed or
Mhm.
valued or respected or anything like that. It's we open our hearts and we invite these sentient forces to work through us, and it's really beautiful. But going back to what you said as well, you have to go through your own vulnerability,
Yeah.
allowing yourself to be taken care of, um and practicing self-care. Self-care is a big part of how the first year program starts. You have to be willing to practice self-care and allow yourself to be taken care of, it because it's through vulnerability where you find your power. And I did the same thing, Colleen. It was like, I know I didn't want anybody working on me, because I was so afraid of cracking, because I've always had, a tough exterior that I had to create, through my upbringing. I had to create that to feel safe. And it took me a long time to allow myself to be taken care of, because I felt so vulnerable inside. And but that's part of it. It's part of learning how to reconnect, with the humans around us, and reconnect with nature, is to allow that vulnerability, and that gentle nudge to the heart, like, it's safe. You can open up now.
Yeah.
Well, and that safety is such a big piece of it, which is
Yeah.
one of the other areas of community that is so beneficial, and
Mhm.
where trainings like what you're talking about, classes coming together, even people listening, the listeners now, just having that sense of other people, in these same practices, in these same processes of the journey of self-discovery, and how do we help in the world. I
Mhm.
remember during that time, trying to decide what my role was, and I think that's a question I ask all the time, even today, what is my role? And it was showing, stand in your own center was my
Yeah.
first role, and care for those around me, that's first.
Mhm.
Then the rings go out from there.
Yeah.
But that's that core, that foundation, that stability.
Mhm. Yeah.
That's that stability is when we started a distance Reiki share right in 2020, and right when we started taking Reiki online, and to try to help people learn how to be online, and during the pandemic. And one of the main mantras that we adopted and lived was, and is, stay stable, be kind.
Mhm.
The one thing we could do is just use Reiki, invite it to help me stay stable and be kind.
Mhm. Beautiful. Yeah.
Sometimes I would have to repeat it
Oh,
every
yeah.
couple minutes,
Several times a day.
several times a day. What do I do? How do I help? Stay stable, be kind.
Yeah,
No, like,
absolutely.
really stay stable.
Yeah. And I do want to say, for those of you who are listening, I think a really good place to start um, is just stepping into a level 1 or level 1 and 2 training. Whatever form of Reiki calls for you. You don't have to become a practitioner of it. You don't have to, have these, you don't have to run out and buy a massage table. You don't have to do any of the things that you think. If you're just using it as a springboard to, shift your world and to remember who you truly are, it's just an amazing place to start.
It unlocks so much. If you're spiritually curious, it is a pathway to explore. And
Hmm.
so many things reveal and unveil themselves from
Hmm.
there.
Yeah.
Well, I
Yep.
think the other thing that is probably helpful for people is they don't have to come in with any required belief system. And it's what we teach is not going to um, require them to develop a particular belief system.
Absolutely. Yeah. I'm glad you said that, because, people still ask, is this connected, to a religion? Do I have to? No, this has nothing to do with, you know, anything but you remembering that the universe is, that you are part of something that is so big, and you can make a difference in this world, starting with yourself, um, in a very compassionate and easy way. Just step in, see what happens.
Yeah.
And see how it all starts to make sense of the world,
Yeah.
because that's the other piece of it is, I know for myself, I used to be like, what is this place anyway? And
Hmm.
I definitely don't think I have the answer to the meaning of the universe, but
Mm-mm.
I have how it works for me.
Yeah.
And that's what I want for others, is that for them, and even to say how I want for others, but what I like to present the idea that people can find that for themselves, whatever perspective that is. And we talk about spirituality and what does that even mean? And spirituality, an atheist can have spirituality, and a scientist can have spirituality. It can be perceived as the biofields, it can be perceived as the universe. I happen to like all my spirit guides,
Mhm.
and I like my engagement with them and my belief system. But do I really think they're exactly what my perception of them is?
Mhm.
I think of it as they just come in a way that is fun for me, that I can wrap my mind around.
Yes, you know what? And that's such a great point too, because um, I know students coming in to, for example, Shamanic Reiki level 1 and 2. I teach them combined now. Um, when they learn how to retrieve their partner's nature spirit ally, you know, and they'll come out of it and they're like, well, you know what? I already have, a four-legged and this, and I have this and this, and now I have this. And it's like, you know what? Spirit shows up in different ways. What if it's your spirit guide showing you a different face,
Mm.
just for a specific lesson, or for a specific, reason. We all have ancestors and allies and four-leggeds and winged ones and all of these different energies that are here to assist. And it's not something that is outside of us. It's part of this deep connection to nature. And I think you do have to have a sense of humor
Yes.
on this, on this path, because the stuff that you perceive, um, is coming in a language that is for you to understand. And you have to learn this deeper language over time. What does this mean? What does it mean when I see or sense this? And spirit has a sense of humor, you know, because
Yes, it
we're
does.
meant, this is an ecstatic path. And we're meant to open our hearts and laugh and move beyond these sort of confines that we've created in linear time and space. It's like that's a lot to move past all of that. That's what kept us safe. These structures, these energetic structures that we've created, that define our life. And when you start moving through and shifting that and expanding, yeah, you need a sense of humor. Don't take yourself so seriously.
Yep. It's so true.
And allow the weird to be weird.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Because I
Exactly.
call it a weirdometer, and it's like, here it goes. The weirdometer is going all the way over.
Yeah. We have, in shamanic Reiki, it's called kamaying with the breath of spirit, which could be, use, some people kamai fire in a fire ceremony, or kamai moon water, or you can just simply use your breath. And it may sound like, shh, when you're moving energy. And I always stop because in the very beginning, I introduce that. It's like, bring your hands together. And on the count of 3, we'll blow Kamai with the breath of spirit through the sacred altar up and out to wherever it's open to being received. 1, 2, 3. And everybody does that. And then I get serious. Do you know why we do that? Because it's weird. And shamanic practice is weird.
Let's just get that part right out of the way.
Yeah, because it's like when people come into a training, a workshop, an experience, it's like it can be a little scary and anxiety provoking. Like, one, I'm not going to do this right. I don't know enough. Everybody else knows what they're doing except for me. I mean, you go through, all of this, and really, Reiki is a lighthearted path, and you don't have to worry about anything. You can bring your silliness in. It's part of the sacred.
Yeah,
It's
that's so
part
true.
of what we hope for,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Mhm.
childlike wonder and
Joy.
joy,
Mhm.
silliness, and fun.
Yeah, it is fun.
It is endlessly fascinating and just, well, mind expanding. It's
Mhm.
so expansive of our reality and what actually exists in this reality and on the earth.
Yeah. And again, we're all going to perceive it differently because we're made up of all of these amazing things. So your perception becomes, your truth, and you allow that to expand and shift and change. And I think back about the things that I believed 25 years ago, and 15 and 10 years ago, or the way that I taught. Everything has changed, and it will continue to change. And I think when we can just allow these sentient forces to, you know, really move through us, and I think it just creates a very different type of experience, as a practitioner, as a teacher, as a human being, as a mom, as a best friend. It changes your world. So,
And your worldview.
yes, very much so.
Well, wow, Stacey, this has been so fun.
I love it.
Yeah, and I just know that we could continue to talk for hours and hours and hours.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to, how can people find you? I know we talked about it a little bit at the beginning, but it's also good to hear it from you and all of
Mhm.
that kind of thing.
And if you have any offerings coming up, and you were talking about 2025, go
Yes.
ahead and share all that.
Yeah. Thank you. Shamanic Reiki Worldwide.com. You can find, we have an amazing faculty, and, Lynn's books are out there. That's another way to just, gently, um, open up to shamanic Reiki. And also our sister organization, eomec.org. So it's EOMEC.org. Our sister organization, we always give back. We don't make any money. We send everything that we bring in for offerings to, for example, the Mayan elders to continue their sacred fire ceremonies. And we helped the shore shamans write a book because their language was disappearing. So our shamanic Reiki is traditional Reiki infused with shamanic lineages from Central and South America, Tibet, and the Siberian steppe. So you find influences of all of that in the teachings, and it's very, very important that we give back to these people, so their sacred fires can continue, so their languages can continue. So many good things going on with OMEC. I'm offering a level 1 and 2 combined. It will be on Zoom. I do not have the dates yet, but it will probably start in February. 6 sessions long. They're usually Tuesday evenings. They're recorded if you can't make them live, but that will be a level 1 and 2 combined certification. And anybody listening on this podcast, if you're interested, I'm offering a 50% off for that, just because I'm so passionate. I'm so passionate about this, and I know what it can bring into your life. That I really just want to share it and help that energy expand even more. And geez, you know what? I have so many workshops coming up. If you're interested in person, I will be in person for level 1 and 2 at Haven Yoga and Massage. That's in Sturbridge, Massachusetts. That's in September. I'm back at the Omega Institute for Shamanic Reiki Master Practitioner. That is a weekend format this year. And I will be in North Conway, New Hampshire, for a Master Practitioner certification in October. All of that is online. You can access that through our website. So I'd love to see you there. And just remember, there's no right path. Follow your heart. Your heart will lead the way for sure, whether it's shamanic Reiki or another form of Reiki. Just do it.
Oh, thank you so much, Stacey. And I know I will get to spend time with you again and in person at different times that we get to be together. Thank you so much.
You are welcome. And for those of you out there listening, the Wisdom of Reiki Conference, what an amazing, we just have so much fun. You have different teachers from, different traditions, and it's just a beautiful sharing of, the heart of Reiki and what it's really doing on this planet. So we would love to see you there. And thank you so much, Colleen and Robin. I have just had so much fun with you today. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're welcome. And thank you to all of the listeners. And we just know this has been fun for you to listen also. With Robin and I, of course, you can find us at reikilifestyle.com. I am teaching in Japan with William Rand on Mount Karama in the end of October and November. If anyone is interested in that class, that is in person. Of course, you can go to reiki.org and find out the more information about that. And otherwise, we have our regular classes too, Reiki 1 and 2 Master, Karuna, Animal Reiki 1 and 2, and Animal Reiki Master as well. So thank you so much again, and thank you to everyone listening. Robin, you have anything else you want to add?
Nope, I'll just say thanks, Stacey, and everyone, and goodbye.
All right. Bye now.
Bye.